Hi, my name is Mariah Bernt, and today I will be talking to you about how temperaments, traits, epigenetics, and developmental stages impact things like neurodiversity, risk-taking, delinquency, and justice involvement. To start this portion of the presentation, I would like to start by covering some of the more basic terms and definitions we will be hearing throughout the rest of the presentation. It is important to note that to an outsider, things like personality traits, temperaments, and behaviors may all seem to mean the same thing, and although they may be similar, there are some very important distinctions. To start, let's talk about temperament. Temperament is something that's going to be present from early childhood. It can be biological or genetic, and it remains relatively stable over time. This is going to affect things like emotional reactivity, sociability, adaptability, and activity level. Traits are going to be similar to temperaments, but there is an emphasis on the fact that it is influenced by both genetics and environmental factors. They are more specific and observable than temperament and can actually be measured using various personality assessment tools and tests. There are numerous temperament and trait theories, but out of all of the theories, the Big Five model is widely accepted and was pieced together by a large collaboration of personality psychologists. This is going to cover things like openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Genetic factors play a significant role in mental health. A family history of depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or anxiety disorders can increase an individual's risk of developing these conditions. Numerous specific genes can actually contribute to various mental health conditions, including the COMT gene, which regulates dopamine and can affect things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. The BDNF gene affects brain development plasticity and can affect depression, bipolar, and schizophrenia. SLC6A4 gene regulates serotonin and can contribute to things like depression and anxiety. One of my favorite topics to cover was epigenetics. This is the study of heritable traits that can happen without changes to the DNA structure and are actually based on environmental factors. This means that heritability is reversible to an extent and gives us hope. Developmental stages are growth and change that individuals go through from infancy to adulthood. They can be physical, cognitive, emotional, and social, and they are influenced by genetics, environment, culture, and individual differences. Now we will dive into more complex subjects and the interconnectedness that can be found amongst our readings. The evolution of why. Why do some juveniles become delinquents while others do not? Early biological theories have been dismissed, but focus largely on the physical appearance of the brain. They actually believed that people were inferior based upon their brain size and structure, and that they should be controlled or eliminated through things like eugenics and selective reproduction. Luckily, this theory was dismissed. Freud focuses more on the psychological or the psychoanalytical approach to behavior. These are things based on the id, the ego, and the superego. Instinctual and unconscious influences on impulsivity, decision-making, passion, aggression, and pleasure. Then there is the more contemporary and multifaceted theory, the biosocial theory. This includes the biological, psychological, and social theories. And lastly, there's the million-dollar question. If brain capacity and function is still developing, with frontal lobes developing last, can we really hold adolescents responsible for uninhibited antisocial behaviors? Sutherland's work in the Principles of Criminology was extremely important. His thought was that criminal behavior was learned, meaning it's not all genetic. it's not all end all be all if you have a certain gene. This helped moves us towards a more sociological explanation of delinquent behavior. Travis Hershey thought delinquent behavior was a given. People's main goals were to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. But things that could help prevent this given activity were things like a healthy attachment, commitment, involvement in their community, and strong, high self-esteemed beliefs. Robert Agnew's general strain theory was created in the 1990s. He asked, why do individuals engage in criminal behavior? Things like strain, negative emotions, coping mechanisms, and individual differences can contribute to this. This was a theory that was widely accepted among many. Six and Matza asked a very important question. They asked, how could these people commit crimes or display deviant behavior when they know there are such bold consequences? Their answer was that they talk themselves out of it. Denial really is a force of nature. People are able to downplay and push shame and guilt aside until it truly disappears. Neurodiversity covers a wide array of neurological differences found in things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other neurodevelopmental conditions. They can be influenced by a combination of genetic, environmental, and developmental factors. Things like having a family history or negative prenatal and early life experiences, including exposure to toxins, brain structure and abnormalities, can all play a large role in affecting neurodiversity. The important thing to remember is that stigma, discrimination, and a lack of understanding are often attached to this term, and we need to fight to embrace this diversity. What makes someone more likely to take risks? These are things that can be influenced by a combination of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. People who are more impulsive, sensation-seeking, fall into peer pressure more quickly, or have low levels of parental support and supervision, low self-esteem, exposure to risk-taking behavior in their family or friends, or unstable living conditions and poor media influences are all more likely to take dangerous risks. Delinquency can be linked to a combination of factors. Personality traits such as aggressiveness, impulsivity, and low conscientiousness, or cognitive traits like deficits in moral reasoning, empathy, and perspective taking, or family dynamics, parenting style, family conflict, and a lack of parental involvement, or psychological factors like low self-esteem, feelings of alienation, and psychological distress, or even social factors like peer influences, socioeconomic status, and community. Justice involvement is going to be any interaction or engagement with the criminal justice system or law enforcement. Traits that increase the likelihood of these are very similar to the traits that increase the likelihood of delinquency, such as aggression, impulsivity, low conscientiousness, sensation-seeking, low agreeableness, and high levels of neuroticism, which all create a bridge back to the beginning of our slides where we talked about traits and temperaments. What we really need to watch out for are things like conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder and neurodevelopmental disorders. The earlier we can take care of these, the more likely we are to be successful with happier children and a healthier outcome. It is important to note that just because some individuals have these personality traits, it doesn't mean that they will engage in criminal behavior. In the 1970s, there was a surge of youth with disorders. Oppositional defiance disorder, which is anger, defiance, hostility towards authority, and conduct disorder, which is aggressive behavior, destructive behavior, deceitfulness, and serious violations of the law, and needs to be treated as soon as possible. 2/3 of all youth entered into mental health facilities enter under ODD or CD. What we need to remember is that some of these behavior can often be seen in a typical teenager, so we need to be very meticulous when deciding to label or diagnose. An article was written about today's youth being anxious, depressed, and antisocial. It states that boys are more likely to exhibit behavioral problems, and girls are more likely to suffer emotional problems. These behavioral problems encompass actions that deviate from what is considered appropriate or socially acceptable, while emotional problems are difficulties in managing and expressing emotions appropriately. Sociologist David Reisman wrote The Reality of Self-Esteem and states that there is a change in emotional vocabularies in the last century or so, which is a part of a larger set of ideas about changes in the self. He believes there are inner-directed individuals who learn standards and goals early in life that have internal compasses, while other directed individuals are sensitive to people's expectations and have a strong psychological radar. Lastly, we have the childhood origins of antisocial behavior. To the left, we have a chart that shows the childhood precursors to antisocial behavior. To the right, we have the most likely factors. And if you see letter E here, that is 23.66%. This is going to cover things like hyperactivity, impulsivity, attention deficit, poor concentration, restlessness, and high psychomotor impulsivity. It is most important to note that there is no one right answer for why some juveniles become delinquents while others don't. It is a vast network of biological, psychological, and sociological factors that makes us who we are. And because society is a factor that ties into juvenile delinquency, that means it is all of our responsibilities to watch out for each other's mental well-being.